Optimism is truly a choice, or at least it is for me. It's a choice. And so while we can feel anxious about some of these things, AI and climate, AI can be used to solve some problems that we don't even know the extent of which it could disrupt humanity. And so I think that's really important for people to understand too.
Yeah. And so I think this is getting out into sort of the 50-50 possibilities of sort of within the next few years. I think one of the things that people don't understand is how artificial intelligence is going to accelerate advances in everything from energy to material science to healthcare. It's going to bring up productivity at this startling level. And so with regard to climate change, I think first skeptics might be listening and saying, doesn't this guy understand how much energy AI uses today? And I do understand, and that is a possible constraint. But I also see, Microsoft is trying to recently purchased 3 Mile Island, and they're getting into nuclear power. I think we're going to see advances in small modular nuclear reactors to say AI is using a lot of energy. That is an issue, but that's going to require us to embrace nuclear power. But also what I think is going to happen is artificial intelligence is going to accelerate advances in science, and we're going to use those advances in science to push the development of nuclear fusion. Like, nuclear fusion has always been one of these things that it has always seemed 10 years away. But I think in the next 5 years, we're already seeing remarkable progress, but I think we're going to see really compressed progress. And one of the ideas I want to impress upon your listeners is this, and it's not my idea. It came from Dario Mondio. He's the CEO of Anthropic. He calls it the compressed century. AI is doubling in capacity and capability every 7 months. And you're like, okay, that sounds really fast. I'm like, yes, it is really fast. But if something doubles 10 times, so doubling every 7 months, that just takes us out 6 years. But if something doubles 10 times, it's 1,000-fold more capable. And are we going to do amazing things with that 1,000-fold capability? Are we going to find next generation materials that are going to make solar cells even more efficiently, radically efficient? That is a possibility. Are we going to develop new materials that can withstand deep pressure so we might be able to produce geothermal energy? Absolutely. I'm not a nuclear physicist, so I don't understand all of the complicated science and materials that are required for fusion, but are we going to make advances in those areas? Absolutely. And I also think that what AI is really good at is optimization issues. And so can we be thinking about energy in fundamentally different ways? I think that many of the advances, as you were just talking about, that 30% advance overnight, sometimes there are software solutions to energy issues that we might just figure out how to do things radically more efficiently. So I really am optimistic on that front. One other thing I wanted to pick up on, and you were talking about optimism. Optimism isn't just this Pollyannish idea. It is the rational choice for the future. I always, when I give keynote talks, I love skeptics, and I think we should all be skeptical about the future. What I don't like are cynics. And cynics, the way I describe it is, skeptics keep an open mind. They keep asking questions. What don't I know? How might the world change? How might customers do this? What are my competitors up to? What are some of the innovators doing? They're always just curious. Cynics, however, think they know the answer. That will never happen. And those are the ones that get in trouble. But to tie it back to optimism, optimists just keep their head up and they're always looking for potential solutions. Whereas I don't think that pessimists and cynics do. I actually think that pessimism is like it's spiritually corrosive, that they just don't explore and probe the future enough. There are always going to be openings for us to develop and create a better future. And that's why I think it is the rational thing to do, is to be an optimist.
you laid out the 99% version of what the future of AI looks like and the future of humanity around AI. But can you give us a couple of other examples of what that future might look like a little further down the road?
Yeah, I think that again in the 50-50 range is that on the positive side, we will begin seeing first a few and then a handful and then maybe more diseases cured. And I think,
For example,
I think many of the cancers, let me just give sort of the possibility within 5 years for AI to help us produce a vaccine against cancer, virtually all cancers, is within the range of possible. Like, is it 25% likely, 50% likely? I can't quite say, but I think it's on that side. I guess I would put that somewhere around the 30% range. But but what I am more confident of is at least a handful of diseases will be cured. And then you have to also take into consideration advances in gene editing technology, for example, that are going to do that. But artificial intelligence can also aid the developments in that. But I think that artificial intelligence ability to help us produce drugs faster within the next few years, I think we're going to see a major change within the Food and Drug Administration, where they're actually using artificial intelligence to radically speed up the regulatory approval process, only because they're going to be inundated with so many promising new drug developments. This is where this idea of a compressed century, we're going to see 100 years of progress in the next 10 years, is a real possibility. And this is where people need to begin thinking differently. I think so many people miss the futures because they go, oh, I think that will happen, but it's not going to happen for 25 or 50 years. And that is...
Can I interject for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to that 100 years of progress collapsed into 10 years. And I want to give the listeners an idea of what 100 years of change might look like. So reading to my daughters, 9 and 6, a biography of Helen Keller. She was born the year after the light bulb was invented. And she lived into her late 80s. She died, and the next year, Neil Armstrong was on the moon.
Wow. That's
100 years of change when things were slow, right? And so when you're talking about the compression of 100 years of change into 10 years, imagine the world was dark when she was born, and Neil Armstrong is looking down on the earth from the moon when she died.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
No, it really is. So could I give you a visual metaphor for that I use?
Yes, let's do it.
That in 1880, the very first building in America that had an electric light was in Wabash, Indiana. It was the courthouse. So it was a single light in the middle of Indiana. And then I show a picture about 100 years later, 1980, satellite technology looking down on Earth. And we've all seen this, like it is, you can see the outline of the United States and all of it is covered in light. Well, not the western part where there are deserts, but you know, the entire East Coast just covered in light. Like that is remarkable progress from a single light to powering the entire, lighting the entire world. That's remarkable. But here's where I like to think differently about the future is that light, I'll be the first to admit, like electricity is great, light is great, but wherever we create a solution, we create a problem. And now light pollution is a real issue. And I would argue this is actually a really serious issue because 80% of the world's population can no longer see the night stars. And I actually love to go up to the Boundary Waters. We're both from Minnesota. It's an international dark sky zone. And to actually see the Milky Way in its grandeur somehow connects me not only to myself and nature, but to something bigger. And I think so again, light, electricity, all great, but suddenly we've created a new problem. And I just want to tie this back to the coming advances in healthcare. What I'm quite certain of is Within 5 years, life expectancy is going to begin increasing significantly. And I think few people would say that is a bad thing. I want to live longer. I want you to live longer. I want everyone to live longer. But as we're living longer, well, suddenly Social Security and Medicare comes under pressure. And if we suddenly have not just 4 generations living in a house, but 5 generations, we're going to have to start designing our houses and other things differently. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a problem, but I do think that longevity is going to be a real issue that's going to come with some really significant societal, moral, ethical issues that we have to consider.